I was working at the Painted Bride Art Center in Philadelphia, and they had an information hallway. And in this information hallway were tons of posters and brochures announcing opportunities for artists. And I saw this one particular brochure, black and white, and it was the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown. And there were a bunch of writers who were lined up on the steps, including the recently departed, as well as Nobel laureate Louise Glück. And I noticed other poets who I had read and admired their works, and I became interested in this particular art center. Interestingly enough, not 2 months later, my girlfriend, who was a big fan of the Kennedys, decided not to spend spring break in Cancun, but to drive up to Hyannisport. And we drove up there, and it occurred to me after we visited the memorial that we could drive to the end of the Cape and go visit Provincetown. And when I arrived there, I remembered this brochure, and it was, even the drive, there was something quite magical about that space going up Route 6. And just as we crested Truro, you can see the big monument there, the Pilgrims Monument. And then suddenly all the history of Cape Cod being the kind of place where the Mayflower landed, all that history, the light was blazing. There was something that hit me about the place that never really left me. So maybe about 4 years later, Thomas Sayers Ellis, one of the founders of the Darkroom Collective, would become a fellow, and I helped move him in. And later that next year, he invited me to rent a studio there, and it was 2 weeks, I believe, my first time. And I met a number of poets that week, including Marie Howe and Tony Hoagland. Marie had a party and had invited all of these folks over. And a couple years later, maybe 3 years later, I applied, got waitlisted, and then applied again, and came back. And I lived in the barn, first floor, and moved there with my son, who at the time must have been about 7 or 8 years old, and my wife. And it was I can go on and on about how that particular place launched me into a consciousness about landscape, my own writing, history, what it means to live in a art-centered community, and how enriching and inspiring that is. I wish I could go back to those years.